Hey YouTubers. So I have my husband with me today. I've been trying to get him on for a while, but we're so super busy. But today I wanted to talk to you guys, we wanted to talk to you guys about our experience with me coming out of the religion as a Jehovah's Witness and my husband who's never been a Jehovah's Witness. So let's jump right into it. So basically, me growing up as a child, I was always instilled, or my parents always instilled in my brain, 1 Corinthians 15:33. 1 Corinthians 15:33, excuse me. But anyways, if you're a Jehovah's Witness child, or if you've been there, then you already know what it says: bad associations spoil useful habits. And then the other one my mother and my father always made me memorize was Proverbs 13:20. And I'm just going to read it from their Bible, the New World Translation. It says, the one walking with the wise will become wise, but the one who has dealings with the stupid ones will fare badly. So me as a child growing up, basically they try to use these scriptures to pretty much keep yourselves away from anyone worldly. And if you watched my first video, I was never allowed to really make friends outside. So we kind of had like this... I'm not sure how to word it, but basically you had to only associate with Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone outside of it was bad association, and they could mislead you to, to do whatever. But I wanted to bring up their watchtower. Sorry, he's like playing with the light. But anyways, I wanted to bring up two examples of what it's like to grow up as a child. And I pulled this one from the 2010 June 15th Watchtower, and this one it's find security among God's people. So that's one of the articles, and I'm just going to scroll down to paragraph, let's say 13 through 15, and the subheading says choose your companions wisely. So I'm just going to give you guys like a summary of it. Basically, paragraph 13 talks about the example of Dinah in the Bible, and how she went to the Canaanite area, and she met a man whose name was Shechem. And what happened in his case, this is in paragraph 14, basically what happened is, it says, I'm just going to read it really quick. It says, the local man Shechem, described as the most honorable of the whole house of his father, saw Dinah and then took her and laid down with her and violated her. So with this situation, and it's funny because it's kind of like pertains to my own situation. A lot of the elders in the congregation, as well as my own parents, they use this example to make sure that us as young females, we never got caught up with any worldly men. So growing up as a child, I was always taught that worldly guys were bad, and it was just like this whole big thing. You go out, you start hanging out with these people, you start doing drugs, you start drinking, you start partying. I remember going to the skating rink, and this is where I actually met my husband as a teenager. I remember my parents always kept me away, and I never understood why. I remember the conversation we had. We were getting ready to leave the rink, and they were talking about how Tyler's not a witness, he's doing this and that. They have this perception, well, not now, but in the past they have this perception. And this is going to come down to the indoctrination, the propaganda from the old Watchtower article. So again, anyone that's not a witness, they're either a drug dealer, they mess around with like a lot of girls and all that, and that's far from the case. That same conversation that I had with my parents, I remember them saying, well, Tyler's blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, well, guys, you can't say these things about him. You guys barely know him. I said, I barely even know him, so we can't use that argument. You know what I mean? So I just thought that's interesting. What's your opinion on that?
Well, being into the situation with me and my wife, Charlotte, it's been, very interesting. We'll leave it at
Very
that.
interesting.
Very
I'll tell
interesting. At first, when we got married, she decided to move out. Well, when we and her got married, she wasn't in contact with her parents.
It was for about like a good year.
It was about a year, and we decided to get married. I'm a Christian, and I believe in God. So at that point, I felt the same way as she felt about getting married, and to start a family. That's how I was raised, and that's what I believe in.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
of course, her family cut her off because that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're indoctrinated to do. So, surprisingly though, for my wife, I was in the situation, I wouldn't be as strong as she was. You know what I'm saying? With cut off her family, because my wife is a very strong person, and when she wants something, she has a willpower. She doesn't let anybody.
I'm a very determined person, and
So.
I'm more about like what's right. So what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. So.
And our wedding was in a church, so her parents didn't attend. That's what they're told to do. So.
We won't even go into any detail about that.
Yeah,
That's like a long story.
Yeah, and like I said, but that's what they're told to do in the Watchtower. Not to go to church. So.
That's where the devils live. That's what they say.
And that's the thing. So, you can't go. If you wholeheartedly believe in your religion, of course, you're going to support your religion 100% no matter what's going on.
And that makes sense, but at the same time, it's going to come down to like, okay, well, what is truth though?
Yeah, and it does. And, at the end of the day, her mom and dad realized that I'm not a worldly person.
They actually apologized for that.
And they did. And, and for the wrong I did, I apologize too. But at the end of the day, they realized that, okay, this isn't a bad idea for that, and like I said, but they're told in their doctrine, that's what they're supposed to do. So
bad people, not witnesses.
Exactly. And then here comes the shunning, because you got to think, if you grew up in the whole Jehovah Witness the whole time, it took me a while to figure this out.
I'm sorry. Well,
when you leave, you have nobody.
So
and that's the thing.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's cool. And you have nobody. So who are you gonna go to? Who are you gonna talk to? Who are you gonna associate with?
You have no one.
Yeah, you have no one. It's almost like the world just cut you off. Especially if you grew up from birth like that. And you have nobody.
And see, that's the other thing when it comes down to the bad association. My dad pretty much converted from whatever he was doing before into the religion. So when he became a Jehovah's Witness, I remember the conversation. He told his family that he wanted to become a witness, and I remember his family were saying, well, you're going against God, you're doing this, you're doing all sorts of things. So after that whole situation, I remember, we become kind of like standoffish towards them. And I think it's because, again, anyone that's not considered a Jehovah's Witness is bad association. So the other thing that I wanted to bring out was the other article, and it was about influencing. And so the other problem is that we're taught that anyone that's not a witness, they're going to influence you. I remember seeing videos on the convention and circuit assemblies. You have your typical JW that works in an office, and like their coworkers will invite them to maybe coffee or something like that after work. And you have like that whole like mental thing where they're like, oh, well, if I do this, then they might bring me away from it's ridiculous. And it's like, okay, not everybody is like that. But I think with them doing that, they have to set themselves apart, and that kind of like fuels that us versus them mentality, and that's not the way to go. It's not really helpful. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What else did you want to say?
Oh no, you pretty much did it. Said what you need to say, and I agree with you. As the doctrine teaches, you're held to such a high standard that
it's work.
And yeah, it is work, but I believe you need to do work for the Lord. But my thing is that you're held to such a high standard that you look down on other people, and that's the worst thing to do. And you never walked in other people's shoes, so how do you know what they're going through? And like I said, and when you look at them and you say, okay, they're not a witness, they're out here doing worldly things, that may not be the case. I'm just saying.
Prime example. Yeah. Right here. Prime example.
Like I said, that may not be the case. You never know what the people's struggles are going through. As a Christian, you cannot just write people off because they don't believe in the same thing you believe. You don't know their past.
And see, I'm so glad your parents taught you that, because I didn't have that.
Yeah, and because, you don't know their past. And my thing is that if you just wrote off people the minute you saw them, or the minute you saw them doing something wrong, what does that say? You don't really care about them. That's what it says. It says you don't care. It doesn't matter what happens to you.
Anyone that hates their brother is pretty much a murderer. That's what the Bible says.
Amen. And that's
So-
what I'm saying. And I mean, like I said, and the whole bad association thing is that we believe in bad association too, but that doesn't mean cut them off. That doesn't mean stop talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean to stop communicating with your brother. You encourage them. That's
right.
what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build them up. So when they realize that they're doing something wrong, they say, hey, you know what? I remember my brother built them up. And my brother told me what to do. That's not the way to go. So, you know, and that's the thing. But if you cut them off, like you're better than them,
You lose that relationship.
Yeah, and nobody's better than anybody.
That's
and
true.
and will never be better than anybody. God says forgive 7 times 777.
That's true. Not shun.
Not shun.
That's exactly what
Forgive
it said.
them. And
Not
like I
shun.
said, me, when I'm wrong, I do a lot of things wrong. But you know what, though? I'll tell that person, you know what? I was wrong and I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Like I said, if you can't forgive someone, God can't forgive you.
That is right. I agree.
How many times have you sinned against God?
Exactly. Facts.
So, I mean, and that's the thing. And I mean, when me and my wife been married for coming up, July 30th will be 6 years. Knowing each other for 8 years.
High school.
High school.
Since high school.
And like I said, everything hasn't been peachy. You know, when she first moved out, she decided to come to church with me and everything. And, you know.
That was tough.
Yep. And we went to church and everything for about a year or so, year and a half. And then, you know, of course, we talked to her parents and, you know, we mended everything.
And then
Everything that
going
was
back.
wrong. Yeah. And then, you know, of course, you know, she started going back. And that's not because she's a weak person. It's because she's been indoctrinated for over 18 years.
I went back and forth between a church, which really isn't even like a big church. It was mainly just my in-laws and maybe one or two other couples. That's really all it was. It wasn't even like anything huge. And that's fine.
When God says, if two or more are gathered, there I'll be in the midst.
Exactly. I agree. But,
Doesn't matter how many people.
you know, I went back and forth for so long because I didn't know what the truth was. I didn't know what to believe anymore. You know, I have this religion where I'm growing up thinking one thing, and I have another religion where I'm learning something different. And in my mind, I'm sure you guys know what cognitive dissonance is, some of you. You know, I had so much conflict, so I couldn't figure out what to do anymore. So what I did was I just stopped going completely. You know, I was like, I'm not going to do any of this anymore. I don't know where to go. I didn't know where to turn. So, again, I'm also a Christian. Some of you may not be. That's fine. You know, whatever you guys believe, that's you. But for me, I prayed for like a good year and a half or two for God to show me what the truth was and what happened. I find out that my brother-in-law is researching, and then everything comes out with the organization, the Australia Royal Commission, you know, the false prophecies, 1925, 1975. We all know what the Bible says about that. So we have all this stuff that comes out now, and it's just like, it's there in the open. So those red flags, I'm like, there's no way that this is God's organization. There's no way whatsoever.
And that's the thing. If you think about it, though, if you have nothing to hide, why do you need to cut off people?
That's the
like
other
I said.
thing,
So
yes.
if you have Jehovah Witnesses, and like I said, if someone says, okay, you know, I found this online. Is this true? If you're labeled an apostate, that means that something is not true. Why would they want to
Back it
argue
up.
with you? Yeah, back it up on what
and
it
prove
says.
Prove it wrong.
And that's
Exactly.
my whole thing is that disfellowshipped, like I said.
Yeah,
and-
disfellowshipping.
Yeah, when people be disfellowshipping, as you say, and people get disfellowshipped, it's like, okay, so nobody can talk to them. Why they do that? To protect the organization. Why they do that?
To make
protect
sure
the
that no
organization?
one else talks to them and finds out the truth. That's exactly what
I mean,
happens.
like I said, if you have nothing to hide, then there's no reason to be disfellowship. Because guess what? It would be facts. It's like saying that, okay,
or call someone an apostate.
if something happened, we'll give an example. Let's say a war went on and something happened in the war. Nobody cuts them off when someone says, well, why did this happen in the war? Well, if it happened, it was true. So there's no need to. They can believe what they want, but you know that if it's fact, then there's nothing they can say about it because it's facts.
I've actually spoken to someone within the last week, and they've called me a liar. They've called other people liars and apostates. And the only thing I've been saying is just prove it. I mean, there's so much evidence out there that this is not God's organization. I mean, again, there's no way that Jehovah would allow so much hypocrisy and wrongdoing to be going on. There's no way whatsoever. And I mean, they try to say that, oh well, you know, what I forget what they said, the apostles or something like that, they were imperfect. But again, this is before they have the Holy Spirit. So, you know, you have your apostles who actually have been with Jesus, and then you have your governing body that is not inspired. So, I mean,
if they tell you that they're not inspired
and they make mistakes, why do you have to follow them?
Why do you follow them then? If they tell you they're not inspired.
Exactly.
Like, so if...
Why do you believe that everybody else is bad if they're not inspired?
Yeah, it's like, okay, if they're not inspired, then that's like, okay, why don't you follow me? I'm not inspired, but you can follow me, though.
Pretty much. I mean, like, anybody can say that. And it's just like, okay, they're not inspired. They've made revisions throughout the years.
But you can't blame them. You cannot blame them because they told you that they're not inspired.
Allegedly.
How can you blame them? Okay, like I said, they told you already that they're not inspired. So when you end up on Judgment Day and God tells you he did not know you,
what happens?
You cannot blame them. They already told you that they're not inspired.
And then the other thing with the association is that, okay, you cut off all of your ties with your friends, your family, anyone that's not a Jehovah's Witness, all right? Let's say you've been born in, just like I have, okay? So, you cut off everyone, and then you have to blindly follow these men that are saying, we're God's channel, you know, obey us, or you'll be destroyed at Armageddon or something like that. Where do you go? Why do you think so many people are stuck? You know, you have people on the inside that can't leave. They're so stuck because they will lose their family on account of uninspired men who are enforcing these rules, like bad association, for example. They enforce these rules and then they have nowhere to turn. So in my case, I got lucky because my husband has never been a Jehovah's Witness. So outside of my family, I mean, I really only have maybe, let's say, one person that I grew up with that I know is not a Jehovah's Witness anymore. But aside from my family, he's the only other person, you know, in your family, of course, but he's the only other person that I have in my support system. And I'm thankful for that. A lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't have that because of the bad association problem. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that because of that, because they cut off, you know, everybody in their social circle, this is the reason why they have the highest suicide rate. They have no one. And it's just like, you know, if that was me, my situation, if I didn't have my husband, where would I go? I have nowhere to turn. If I'm finding out that this information is wrong, where do I go? Everyone else was a bad association, so I have no one. You know? So it's messed up. It's so messed up. But the other thing I wanted to mention, like I said, was about the influence. Again, you know, we're always taught that a worldly person will influence your decisions, which is, it's ridiculous. It's really stupid. But this one is from the Watchtower. It's 2013, August 15th. And this is paragraph 8. And basically, I'm just going to quick read through it. It says, never forget that bad associations spoil useful habits. And they reference 1 Corinthians 15:33, of course. It says, even some of our relatives could be bad association. That is, they might influence us to do bad things. Not true. I have my own in-laws, my own relatives that have not done that, and they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, nor have they ever been, so that's false. This says, at one time, High Priest, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Eliashib was a good example, word hard with Nehemiah, blah, blah, blah. But Tobiah and others were bad association for Eliashib. It says they influenced him to do things that were wrong, and this made him unholy. So this is what they reference to justify bad association. This is ridiculous. It says we need to associate with people who encourage us to do good things, such as, and get this, reading the Bible, attending the meetings, and going in field service. It says we can be especially grateful when our family members encourage us to do what is right. If someone can, I know there's Jehovah's Witnesses out there, please show me in the Bible where it says we have to attend meetings and going in field service. Please show me that. And then, you know, whatever happens. But it's just like, this is ridiculous. So the other paragraph, it says support Jehovah's work. So again, we have these uninspired men that are making these rules, that are commanding us to pretty much give up our friends, give up our family, because they're not Jehovah's Witnesses. And again, on the jw.org website, it talks about, do they break up families? Now, when you have the bad association, spoil useful habits instilled in the children's mind, like I said, I can guarantee the children that I grew up with, we all had the same like information given to us, like year after year after year. When you have the uninspired man talking about this, your life is pretty much done. So bad association, it's crazy, but my husband has been the only one to back me up. He's been the only one, in addition to his family. I'm very grateful for them as well. But my husband has been in my court from day one, from the point where, when I first moved out. I moved out at 18 years old, and I moved out at 18, and then I went back and forth between the meetings and then church, and my husband has proven my parents wrong, that they had the wrong idea of him. I'm going to give you guys an example. I remember a conversation I had with my mom some years back. This might have been about a year or so before I moved out. This is when we first started talking. And the conversation that we had, my mom, and I apologize if you're watching this, but it has to come out. I remember the conversation that we had, and she compared another brother who they thought would be a good fit for me to a Mercedes. Okay. And they compared my husband to pretty much a beat up old car. So I remember her asking me, she would say, okay, well, do you want the Mercedes or do you want the old car? I'm thinking in my mind, I don't want the material car. I just want what I like, and I'm like, you can't really use that analogy. I didn't think that was really fair. So of course, again.
And I'll give you an analogy. I had a Jaguar XJ8. It was a very nice car. It was an expensive car. It was a nice car. Well, the transmission went out on that. And then I got a $400 Toyota. And that car ran me 90,000 miles.
That's for you guys out there that like your cars.
$400 I spent on that. The body was beat up. It was rusted. But yes. You know what? Every time I took it to get inspected, it passed with flying colors.
It was all reliable.
7 years I had that car. That cost me $400. Mm-hmm. And it was the most reliable car I ever had.
Exactly. So just because you get, a brand new car doesn't mean it's going to be like the best thing for you. Like I said, I took the old car, and I'm grateful for my old car. Mm-hmm. And again, this old car proved my family wrong. He has been a good example. With him being not raised in this religion. He has not been raised in this religion. His parents and family have never been Jehovah's Witnesses. And he is, a good example. So, I just thought it was very interesting that, we're instilled about bad association. And I know some of you are probably, you may have a husband or wife that's not a witness. And, feel free to share this with them. I'm hoping that can't get my words together, but I'm hoping that it encourages them.
And you got to remember, though, you're supposed to love people. Everybody is your brother and sister.
That's right.
Remember that. It doesn't matter. Call them your enemy. Call them what you want. But you're supposed to love them, no matter what. And just because they believe something different than you, don't let that change who you are in here.
You will need them later.
Well, it's not even the fact that you may need them. It's just the fact that you remember it's all about love and compassion. So you have to remember, because someone does you wrong doesn't mean that you have to write them off.
And I'm still learning that myself. It
means
tough.
that,
it's tough.
They did you wrong, but maybe that's all they know. Maybe that's all they know. I have friends out here that have their guard up so high, it's ridiculous. But that's because that's all they know. They assume that everybody is going to mess them over, and that's not life. Life is about forgiving. Like I said, how many times have you done somebody wrong?
Right.
Like I said, so it's one of the things where you have to remember, because that your mom, sister, brother doesn't want to talk to you or anymore, or doesn't want to deal with you, you have to be patient with them. This is the only thing that they know. If this is how you're raised, it's the only thing that they know. So how can you expect them to change overnight? Not everybody is the same. Mm-hmm. Just show them love and compassion, no matter what. If they deny you, if they reject you, anything. You have to remain faithful. You have to remain calm. If getting loud and getting obnoxious with people is not going to get you anywhere because you feel that they disrespected you or, they stepped on your toes or whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they said, if you think about something 5 years from now, and it wouldn't matter 5 years from now, what kind of shoes you wore, what kind of watch you had, what kind of hat you had, doesn't matter. So why get bent out over shape of it? Why get bent out of shape over it?
And see, this is coming from someone, again, who's never been raised a witness. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is that the doctrine, it kind of enables you and instilled in you. But you got to remember, though, it's all about love. It's about compassion. Like I said, you're not perfect. Nobody's perfect out there.
It has nothing to do with bad association.
Yeah. What it has to do is love and compassion. You have to remember that you have to be focused. Mm-hmm. You got to give people time. Like, you can't, if this is all you know for 25, 30 years, how do you expect to change overnight? It's not going to happen. I can tell you that. It's not going to happen. I have struggles that I've been trying to deal with for 5, 10 years. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen.
And see, for me, just because of how I was raised with, cutting off people, I'm still pretty much struggling with that now. And he gets on me now, and it's tough. A lot of the traits that we have learned is not love whatsoever. So for me to at least have this example of what it is, it kind of helps me to change. So,
yeah, I mean, just think about your child. Your child will do stuff to you, lie to you, take your stuff and everything.
It doesn't mean you have to shun them.
Yeah, you don't shut them down and tell them, you can't associate with me or anything. It's the same thing. Consider your brothers and sisters like that. They may do you wrong, but sometimes all it takes is an apology. I don't like when people talk to me sideways. That's the one thing that irks me. But you know what? If they say I'm sorry, I can think back right on what I did that was wrong. And tell them I'm sorry, too, for what I did wrong to them. Even if it was an attitude, if it was a snarl, if I said something, cussed at them, I could tell them right then, I'm sorry, I messed up. Because you see, you got to get your guard down where you keep it so high that you just cut people off. That's not right.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jehovah's Witnesses, you guys are going to have to learn that, it's not an easy journey. It really isn't. But, even your inactive family members or the family members that have never been Jehovah's Witnesses, we saw the convention a few years ago. And we saw the part where it talked about shunning inactive ones. So you have your inactive ones that are bad association. They may have, pretty much never done anything to you at all. Pretty much what he's saying is that love is going to come down to it. If you actually love your child, if you love your mother, your brother, whatever, just because they're inactive, you're not going to shun them for whatever reason. Religion has nothing to do with it. If this religion is supposed to be teaching love and compassion, I mean, please, somebody show me where that is, because I don't see it. With the disfellowshipping policy, with, shunning and all that, I don't see that. I don't see that. And the fact that they say, well, I'm shunning them to bring them back because I love them. That's not love at all. That really isn't. Yep. So again, you have people out here that have never been Jehovah's Witnesses, and they have so much love for people aside. Even if they're bad association, these people have so much more compassion for other people out here. Mm-hmm. And there should be no way that you need to cut them off. Now, the ones that are doing wrong, everybody is living their life. As long as you guys keep that away from me, who am I to judge? I may have a rafter in my own eye that I need to get rid of. I'm not going to tell you, okay, we need to stop doing this and that. I don't want to talk to you anymore. I can't do that. That's not my place. So again, for the bad association, yes, we need to be mindful of that. But at the same time, we don't need to cut people off completely. You have no idea who they are. And the fact that my husband can prove other Jehovah's Witnesses out here wrong, that speaks a million words. We're taught for years that everybody else that's not a witness, they're going to be destroyed at Armageddon. They're bad association, they're doing drugs, they're doing all this and that, they're sleeping around, and that's not even the case. That's not the case. So, but nope, I wanted to pretty much bring that out to you guys. I wanted to get my husband on. So I hope that we helped. Feel free to like and leave comments, and we will be back soon. See ya.